Hey everybody! So now I'm going to do part 3 of my journey to Albany Care, which we have finally gotten to Albany Care. And Albany Care is in Evanston. It's on Main and Maple. It is a 400-bed facility, and right now I think we have like 300 people. It was an old hotel, and so they converted it into a home. They call it nursing homes, but it's not really a nursing home. It's called intermediate care facility. And pretty soon they're going to be calling it specialized mental health facility or something. So it's not like nursing home like you think in nursing home, like old people just sitting around. It's not for that. It's for like any ages, like 18 and older, that has mental illness and they really need care, continuous like residential care and support. So I got there, and they went right to admissions, and I went in the admissions office, and the administrator, Mr. Tossy, was like, welcome to Albany Care. And like, he was right there. I was like, hi. Didn't think he was going to be like right there. But he was nice, and he said hi. And the first person I met was Chris, and he was the QA, the quality coordinator, something. Anyway, he's the person that works, like with admissions. Basically, he makes sure that like everyone's like doing okay, like problems are solved between like clients and staff, and like quality assurance, I think it is, or quality something. Oh well. And he basically met me and initially inventoried my stuff, put my name on all my stuff. I had like huge boxes of stuff to inventory, so he had fun. And I did initial screenings. Then I met my PRC that I was assigned. Her name was Stephanie. She had just been there a month. She took me up to my floor, and I was in a room with 3 other women, which is how it's usually done, is 3 to 4 people to a room, and separated by genders, obviously. Although people can go into each other's room, like men and female and stuff, but you can also refuse to have someone in your room, obviously. So, and the 3 people I had met were all older, obviously. Like, everyone was like much older than me. I hadn't met anyone in their 20s or even 30s at that point. So I got up there and I got like blood pressure taken and vitals and unpacked and stuff. The next day was Thanksgiving. So later in the day, I was downstairs talking to Chris about getting the internet set up, because I do have Wi-Fi. And this guy comes in, and he's like, I'm Jonathan Eastman, and I'm a clinical director. I was like, hi. And he's like, do you recognize my voice? And I was like, no. And he's like, well, if I said, blah, 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 it's stuff on this video for Albany Care that was put out on YouTube. And he was like, I was like, oh, you did the video. He's like, yeah, I'm the voice on the video. I was like, okay. And at that point, like, my mindset for the first, like, month straight, or even more, was like, please don't kick me out because I'm blind. Like, literally, that's all I thought about. So right away, I'm like, thank you so much for taking me. Like, I know I'm blind, and I promise, like, we'll figure this out. And, I'll get a mobility instructor in here to help with my cane, and you can talk to Friedman Place or any questions, and like, I'm going to make this as easy for you as possible. And he's like, I don't care that you're blind. He's like, that's not the issue. The issue is you need to be safe and like not be hurting yourself. I was like, oh, okay. He's like, yeah, I know your history. I'm like, okay. Feel kind of cut out. But anyway, then he asked me if I wanted to go to IHOP for breakfast, which is what he does on Thanksgiving for certain residents. Like, I don't know, he must pick different ones every year. It's not for everybody, obviously, because that would be like $1 million worth of breakfast. But, it's different ones, and probably because I was new, he said I could go. So I was like, oh, that's cool. So then I met a guy, Peter, who was in his 20s, and he had like a blind family member. So he became like a friend, he became a friend for a while, and he like helped me down to dinner and stuff like that. So I just hung out and like just sort of did things, day by day. We went to the IHOP. It was good. Days went on. I talked to my friends about what was going on. I had a lot of I had a lot of backlash or negativity about that I went here from different people. There was one person that is quite insensitive and was saying, you signed over your rights, you signed over your, now you're telling people you're not competent, and you signed over this and you signed over that, and they're abusive. And she was putting up all these articles on Facebook that I didn't even know about, and later she's like, I put up these articles. I'm like, well, it's a good thing I didn't read them, because I had heard things about nursing homes and having bugs in it and staff being abusive and like all these things. And I had asked all these questions to the admissions person, and I had been very careful in assessing how things were in my first days of coming there. But but so many people of my friends, a lot of my friends I think were really surprised, obviously really shocked as I was that this happened, and I couldn't even really explain how it happened. And part of me didn't even want to explain how it happened. So I think people were shocked, but people, a few in particular, especially that one woman, was like really against me being there, and that obviously didn't help, And I would talk about wanting to settle in and wanting to be as independent as possible and everything else like that, and get what I needed to get. But also at the very same time, I was still extremely depressed and suicidal and everything else like that. And she couldn't put those things together. She's like, well, if you're really that suicidal, why are you fighting for your independence and this and that? Or, you've already told them that you're not competent, so why are you doing this? And it was a nightmare. But eventually I stopped talking to that person. So I had that drama going on for a few days. It was a shock because there were so many people. Like I said, Freedom Place had 70 slots for people, and I don't think we were ever above like 50. Now this place had at least 300 people. Now granted, you don't see them all at once, but going on the different floors, the elevators, being in the dining room, it's very loud. It's a lot of people, and a lot of people that have different behaviors and mental illness. I mean, it's not like horrible, like I said, not like the movies or not like anything, it's just people that have different severe mental illness. I mean, and I'd seen some of that at Trilogy and different places I've been and in the hospital, but the difference was certain symptoms were just taken in stride because maybe that's as good as it could get for this person, or that's like their baseline. For example, there are some people that scream, like, scream, really loud, and they are just sort of not left to themselves. I mean, I'm sure they're checked in on. I'm certain, but if you say, "Hey, this person is screaming," the response is, well, okay, that's part of their illness, and they could be on medications, but it still could cause issues. So they try to minimize like how it's going to affect people, and they do obviously address it, but it's not like, oh my goodness, this person is screaming, because that's sort of like a part of everyday life for this person. It's not like they're not compassionate, it's just the way things kind of are. So when I was up on the 4th floor with my PRC at the time, Stephanie, I was doing an assessment, and it was really dumb. It was like, can you take a bath by yourself? Are you going to take stuff off someone's plate when you're eating? And it's like, what am I, 2 years old? But they were asking all these questions, personal questions, and I was trying to tell this woman everything and be honest, but she really wasn't giving me anything back in terms of feedback or warmth or anything, so it was very frustrating. And then I heard this one woman, screaming away, and I was thinking, well, if this is the hospital, she would have been getting a shot, because we had a couple of people that had anxiety attacks, and they would just scream because they were so scared. But nothing was really happening, and I was like, oh my goodness, what is going on? I felt so bad for the person. I also felt anxious, because loud noises like that trigger, or they're hard for anybody, but they're also hard for a blind person that can't see, but they're also really hard for someone that has PTSD and is triggered easily by loud noises. So by the time I got downstairs, I was like a total wreck. I was like, these people are screaming, they could attack me, like everything else. So they gave me an Ativan and like whatever. So it took a lot to get used to, and there are still times, like a lot of times, if I'm in a bad mood, not a bad mood, but if I'm really in a hard emotional place with my depression or my anxiety, where I can't be out of this room, I can't be in the hallway, I can't be going downstairs, because the crowds and the people, even staff talking loud, like they sometimes do, is too much on me. But overall, I know the characters around here, I know what they are like, I know like 99.9% of them are harmless. The ones that do have issues get taken to the hospital or taken out of here. So at the time it was really, really hard to get used to. But I've gotten used to it. And let's see, another thing that happened was after my first week, I had decided that I had a fair try with the case manager that I've been working with, and it just wasn't working out for either of us. And so I asked if I could have a new caseworker. And they said sure. And so I got this caseworker named Anna. And she was very, very nice. She was very, very positive, like relentlessly positive and optimistic. And she was very strong-willed in terms of her opinions on things. And she ended up being very, very committed, very, very emotionally involved in a way, and just what I needed. But in the beginning it was really hard because I was so in a suicidal place. I was so in a depressed place. I mean, not depressed like even moderate depression. I was really depressed. I was still like, I want to be depressed, and meeting with her, whenever I would start to get upset, I would run out of her office, and she would follow me, or she would come after me later and try to talk. And that was sort of our relationship. And, she said things that were insensitive to me, but she was trying her best. She'd be like, why don't you try to look up something funny on the internet? And after talking to Jonathan and people for the longest time about it, I'm realizing that as insensitive as that sounded when I was so depressed, like, it was actually, like, the best thing she could think of to do at the time. And also, it might not have helped everything, but it could have helped for, like, one tiny, like, drop of depression to, like, laugh at something, But at the time, I was like, what in the hell are you doing? I was so sensitive to anything anyone said. And I am, by nature, but being so raw, it made it so much worse. So I had, most conversations with her ended up in me crying and leaving. And there was this one night where, I forget what happened. Oh, I think I was talking to her, and I told her I was having stomach upset, and I had thought she had told the nurse, and the nurse is like, well, when you have a medical issue, you should tell me and not go to your PRC for it. And I'm like, well, what the heck? And then she had made me, I was really in an anxious mess, and she had made me be down in the dining room where I did not want to be sitting. I wanted to be in the back of the dining room where it was quieter, or I didn't want to be there at all. And she had made me be there because she was like, it's good for you and whatever. So, at that point, I was like, I hate PRCs, I hate you guys, I'm just not going to talk to you guys, whatever. And I went to my room and I was like, I hate you, I'm not going to talk to you, I'm not going to argue with you, just go away. And she's like, no, she's like, I hope we can work through this. And we did, like, in the end, like, she was always there for me. And I would talk to her about, I'd end up talking to her about all the reasons why I didn't want to be alive. One of them was I really felt like I was in the forefront of my family's life in a bad way because I'm blind, and like I was given a lot of attention and a lot of energy in a family that didn't have a lot to spare in terms of emotional resources, and just being emotionally available for each other and having a good healthy communication. So it was really hard having a disabled child, and it was hard on my sister, who is 7 years younger, and she really felt like she was in the background, and I knew it for the longest time. And so I thought that I would, if I wasn't around, that I would finally, she would finally be in the forefront of my family's life, and she would not have to deal with me anymore. Because I was like, this is going to be like a lifelong thing. I'm always going to be blind. I'm probably always going to need some support from my family in ways that, sighted people might not, or just anyone with a disability might not. And I am always going to have mental illness, probably, and so I'm always going to need a level of support, that they have a hard time giving anyway. So that was my big reason. My other reason was just like I didn't want to deal with family issues at all. I wanted to just be done with everything. I just felt like I was a burden on everyone. I just was sick of having these issues. I was sick of everyone saying I was too emotional. I was sick of having to self-injure all the time. I was just sick of living, basically. And I cannot think of any reason why. I just figured that everyone would grieve over me, but eventually they would understand, and that I would always be there in their hearts, So that was my mindset, and that's what I talked to Anna about a lot. And she was like, well, you can't control where someone puts their attention and everything else like that. And so we had these discussions, and so things went on. I was up and down emotionally a lot. There was a time 3 weeks into my stay where I all of a sudden realized I have these thoughts again of like wanting to kill myself, but I can't do anything about it. And so I felt really trapped and really angry. In December, the end of, right around New Year's, I think it was New Year's Eve day, I had just had enough. I had lost my ring that Deborah had given me. I thought it was stolen. One of my roommates at the time, who was kind of zoned out and steals stuff herself, was like, you're probably never going to see it again. And I was just enraged because I knew stealing happened a lot, and I was just like, what is everyone doing about this? And I just had so much emotions built up. And previous to that, I think like a week or so back, I had actually had a glass picture frame in my room that I think just hadn't been caught by the CNAs or whatever. And so I broke a piece off it. And so then I came up from there and from lunch, and nobody was in the room, and I tried to scratch myself with it and hurt myself with it. But Chris wandered in, who never comes upstairs, and he took it away from me after somewhat of a struggle. And I ended up going to the hospital, St. Mary's, which was a totally different experience, and I won't go into it now, but it was totally useless. I came back feeling so much worse than I did when I came in. But the upside of it was I came back and I had this really long conversation, and I was like totally emotional, and I stayed in the office with Anna for 45 minutes and yelled and cried. And that was like the first time I stayed in the office and didn't run away. After that, though, I had a lot of ups and downs with scratching and self-injury, and I was doing it a lot, and I just didn't care. They put me in this observation room, which is all of the 26 rooms, 26 numbered rooms are observation rooms. So mine was on the 3rd floor, so it was 326. So I had to be in there, and the doors open, and you hear all the noises from the nurse's station, and it's just terrible. So but it didn't matter. I just kept doing it, and I was like in this power struggle, and I was like, I don't care, you guys. This is just insane. Like, I feel so trapped here. I don't want to be alive anyway. Like, why don't you just leave me alone? And they tried safety contracts, and I wanted to rip it up and throw it in their face. I did sign it, but I didn't follow it. I signed a safety contract at St. Mary's just to be able to go home. I didn't believe it. I went to the hospital another time for it. That time I had also been suicidal. And I tried to break a nail polish bottle, but I didn't actually break it. And so then it got to be around February. Yeah, it was in February that Jonathan came into my life because he had been talking to the staff, who were basically going nuts over this because I was being a little rebel and not stopping. And so they didn't know what to do. And I'm lucky because I've heard since then that other people that self-injure, and even might cut just superficially. Like, there was a story about people in another facility where this girl cut just, minor cut. It was self-injury. It was purposeful. But she was discharged, and I wouldn't know, I don't know where people go when they're asked to leave, like here. I don't know if there's like a higher level, like security or whatever. But everyone in the hospitals would say, if you don't be careful, they're going to ask you to leave. And now I know that's not true, at least not for the foreseeable future, as long as I have the relationship that I do with staff, and I'm not, totally doing anything off the wall that they can't help me with. But I didn't know that at the time. But anyway, Jonathan came into my life, and he didn't burst in, but he came into Anna's office. We were sitting and talking, and I was like, I don't want to talk to you. He's like, well, you have to talk to me because you need to be safe. I'm like, oh, okay. So basically, he said, I'm not going to tell you to stop scratching. I'm like, really? He's like, no. And so we basically came up with like a harm reduction plan, which is usually used in drugs. It's kind of like those things where if you've heard of like needle exchange, where like they at least get clean needles to do drugs with. So at least that's like reducing the harm to them. So we basically did something like that, and I'll explain it more in another video. But the biggest thing about it was that I connected with him. He said that part of this plan was that I see him every week to talk about why I was doing this and to face my emotions, and he had some interesting ideas of how to get me to express emotions that day. that I might tell you about later, but it's kind of like not what you would expect, but it was just funny. Like, he had me scratch him to show him how hard I scratch and what it feels like. And he wanted me to punch his chest to release my feelings. And I was like, who is this guy? Oh my god. So, but he was nice, and like I cried in the thing, and he was really nice about it. So yeah. So that's basically getting into Albany, and that part of the story. And so, him coming into my life was like the turning point of starting to acknowledge my feelings and actually do therapy. So I will talk more about like therapy with him and my relationship with Jess and how that came about later. But right now I think someone's coming to vacuum and I don't want it to be on the camera. So I will talk to you guys later.
Help web stop button.